Why they did not join?
In group, I have sent message, sir.
Okay, all right, great. See, tomorrow also you guys would be having a session, okay? So that we can complete a bit more.
Okay.
So same time.
Okay, sir.
All right, so let us start. Before starting the transactional aspect, one more setup that I would like to show you. It is called the document sequence. Okay, document sequence creation. Now, document sequence we had discussed when we were discussing the setup part. Something with respect to the setup checkbox called override document category. At that point of time, I explained that there is something called a voucher numbering, which is configured, and then on each of the document, the invoice or the payment document, the voucher number gets assigned based on the document sequence setup that we do. Okay. Now, that is something that we will define it. Okay. So that is something that has to be defined before you can start with the invoicing activities, because for all the not only invoicing, even for payments, but then payments we will look at later when we do the setups related to the payment. But for invoicing, it needs to be done, if at all, at the specified ledger option level, you have made the document sequence as mandatory. If it is not, then you can do it later on also, but then the numbering will only get the voucher numbering, okay, will get only assigned to the documents post the creation of the document sequence configuration. Okay, so quickly I will show you that setup. Okay, so the name of the setup is called manage document sequence. Go to financials, and we have something
Sir,
called,
you didn't share the screen, sir.
okay, sorry, my bad. Okay, we are on the financials. Okay, and the task name is manage. So first the setup needs to start with specify ledger option. Okay, so that is where you enable first of all the document sequence. Okay, so let me say this is the ledger. Then below you have this accounting and document sequence, where you will enable it by ledger or legal entity according to which you want the sequence to be maintained. And then you can enforce it. Enforce means making that document sequence mandatory, okay, for payable or receivable. Okay, so that you can do it. Okay, in my case, I would open the other instance. For ABC Corp, it is enabled, and that is why it will be required when we do the creation or the invoice creation. Setup and maintenance. Financials, and you have manage document sequence. Okay, before that, I'll show you the specify ledger options. Okay, for ABC Corp primary ledger, scroll down and you see here accounting and document sequences enabled by ledger, but I haven't enforced it. I haven't made it mandatory. So even if it is not configured, then, or if you don't assign it, still you will be system will allow you to move ahead. But yeah, if it is defined, then the voucher number will get assigned to the document. And let's see how it is defined. Manage document sequence. So you will see here manage payable document sequence. That is the one that you need to select for payables. Okay, and then in here you add it. Okay, And then once you add it there, it will ask you to select certain aspects like, the module, the type, the determinant type, what are the things that you need to assign. So when you click on it, okay, so let me just add to show you how blank it would be. So in this case, this is how it will appear. And then you provide the name. The application is payable. Module also is payable. Okay, the type will be, there are three types: automatic, manual, or gapless. What does it mean basically? Whether the numbering should be automatic or whether it is to be manual or whether it should be gapless, no gap. Okay, manual means manually enter it. Okay, so what is the type that you want to associate? Then the determinant type, whether it is at the legal entity, ledger, or business unit level that you want it. So we have defined it at the ledger level at the specify ledger options, right? So the same way here also we will choose ledger. Whatever you have chosen there, the same way you will have to choose the determinant type here. Okay, then below you will assign. So assigning means basically you are assigning a category associated to it, associated to the document. Okay, so you will understand what the categories are. So invoices, when it is created in Oracle, okay, you need to select a type of invoice against it. Now, what is a type of invoice? Standard. Standard is one type. Okay, similarly, credit memo is one type. Debit memo is another type. Prepayment is a fourth type. Okay, retainage is a fifth type. Okay, withholding is another type. Okay, so these are all the types of invoice. Okay, so types of invoice that you associate with your invoice document. So standard you will choose in all such cases when you have the invoices for your liability, as in for any items that you have procured, okay, or purchased, for any expense that you have incurred. Okay, for all those things, whenever supplier charges you, okay, or bills you, that kind of bill you will create as a standard invoice. Okay, and then credit memo is or debit memo is why credit or debit memo is to correct the standard invoice. Okay, so correct as in what? It is kind of a credit that the you are claiming or the supplier would be giving you. Okay, so that is where credit memo or debit memo comes up to reduce the balance of the supplier. Okay, and prepayment is why prepayment is basically for advance invoices. I have explained you earlier also what is the functionality of a prepayment invoice. Again we will see it, but then why I am repeating all of these things again and again is so that these concepts actually get embedded in your mind, okay, or you actually grasp that concept. That is why time and again I refer to those points. Okay, so prepayment is the advance invoice, or the whenever you want to create an advance, at that point of time, prepayment is the type that you will associate. Now, these things, standard invoice, credit memo, debit memo, prepayment, all these are document categories also. Okay, they are kind of the document category in which the categorization of the document happens. And therefore, when you define the sequence at that point of time, you have to associate those categories. And in turn, for those categories, whenever you book those kind of invoices, or documents, you can say the voucher number will get selected. Okay, based on this particular setup. Okay, so that is where you associate that category here, the next step. Once you have created the sequence, the next step is to assign that category. Okay, so let me show you the one that I have already created. So I'll delete this. For ABC Corp, I have created a document sequence. So this is the one. Okay, so the name I have given it in such a way that anyone can easily identify. Generally, it is year-on-year basis that the document sequence categories are created. Okay, so voucher numbering. Why? Because on a yearly basis, the filing is done, right? The filing of the documents generally is done on a yearly basis. The box files that you have in your offices, okay, under that the documents generally would be for that particular year, for one particular year. That is the reason document sequence also, when it is created, okay, it is created for a specific year. Okay, the start date and end date would be for a specific year. Okay, and accordingly the numbering also will be managed. Okay, so below you will see there is a numbering. Okay, so this is the numbering you would give. This is something that you manually give when you create at the time of creation. So let me show you. If I click on add and create a new value, okay, I will add it for next year. Okay, so ABC Corp _ AP AP means this is for payables. Okay, doc means document, SEQ means sequence, and I will say for 24 year 2024 I am creating this sequence. Application will be payables. Module will be payables. Okay, type I am selecting as gap plus because I don't want the number skipping to happen. Determinant is ledger because I have defined or I have enabled it at the ledger level in the specify ledger options. And here the start and end date I will provide it as 1/1/2024, 12/31/2024. Okay, that is the date. And when I click on this drop down, okay, it will ask the initial value, it will automatically populate as 1, but this is not the sequence I want. I want the sequence in such a way that just by looking at it, looking at the number itself, anyone can identify that this belongs to so and so year. Okay, so that is where the prefix I will start with 24 and 000 and then 1. Okay, so it should not be more than 9 digits. Okay, the document sequence should not go beyond 9 digits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I will have to reduce 2 zeros. Okay. So let me see if this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. 9. Okay. And then the document sequence is input, let's say. Okay, and then the number you have initial number, the first number you have input, display message as in whenever the document number is generated, when you save the invoice or save the payment at that point of time, automatically it should give you it should display that number such that you can write it down on the physical invoice that you have. Okay, the physical copy that you have, on that you will just mark or you will put that number and then you will file it. Okay, and then below you assign the document category. Okay, so let me first save it. First save the sequence. So now sequence is saved with this number as the initial value. And under this, I will have to assign all those documents for which this sequence should be applicable. Okay, so in this case, I will add for invoices. Okay, so I will click on add row, and the document sequence category I mentioned, right? There are standard is for standard invoices, credit memo is for credit memo invoices, debit memo is for debit memo document, prepayment is for prepayment document. Okay, so for such, the document category will be available with that same name. Okay, so now I will click on search. I am associating that standard invoice category here. So I will say standard invoice. Okay, let me put it in percentage. Okay, with the application short name as AP. Okay, that is the one that you need to select. STDINV standard invoices with the short name, application short name as AP. That means this is for AP. Okay, that is what you will have to select. Okay, method you can keep it as blank, and start date and end date. Okay, that you will have to provide. So which will be same as your start date and end date of the sequence. Okay. Okay, and then ledger value. What is the ledger to which it needs to be associated to? Because we have enabled it at the ledger level, right? So that is where you will have to provide the ledger name to which it becomes applicable. Okay, so if there are multiple ledgers and for all of them you want to maintain the same sequence, then you will have to add those values, okay, one by one. Okay, so this just as a one process I am showing you, for one ledger I am showing. Okay, now for credit memo, debit memo, also you want the voucher numbering, so you will have to add those documents as well. Okay, I will go to the search list. Credit memo, I'll enter in description. Okay, let me enter by percentage. Okay, against which AP is the application short name. Okay, so you can even give the short name as well, so that you can reduce the search list. So here we have credit memo invoices selected. Okay, again enter the date. And for which ledger it is applicable. So it will be basically the ledger that is associated to your BU on which you are working. Okay. So now if once I have added all the document categories, I will have to save it. So now if I show you the one that is there in the 2023 document sequence, you will see all the documents here. See, standard invoice is there, debit memo is there, credit memo is there, prepayment is there. Okay, similarly, future dated payments is there. Okay, so all these documents sequence you will have to assign one by one. Okay, to the sequence that you create for your ledger, and then for your payable module. Okay, once this has been done, your setup will be complete for the document sequencing, and then we will start with the start with the transactions. Okay, before starting with the transaction, two more things. What is it? The access, right? The access you need to provide. Okay, to your, first of all, user ID. To your user ID, you will have to provide the roles. Okay, what are the roles? It is accounts payable invoice supervisor. Because we are going to do the invoicing transaction, that is where we need to have the access for accounts payable invoice supervisor and accounts payable manager role. Okay, so these are the two roles you can have. Okay, there is one more role called accounts payable invoice specialist, I believe. Okay, so that role also will be there. You can add all these roles because we are doing with respect to invoice. Okay, at one go, if you want to do, maybe you can add the other roles related to payments as well. So accounts payable payment specialist also you can add. Okay, so these are the four roles you might want to have, or you might want to add. So let me show you for me what has been added. So I will click on initial users. I can go from security console as well. Okay, so let me go from there. Tools, security console. Click on user. I'll enter my user ID. Okay, and here we have our AP accounts payable invoice supervisor, accounts payable manager, accounts payable payment supervisor. Okay, so these are the roles that you can add for yourself. These three roles would suffice. Okay, so I would say this as payment supervisor. Okay, so these three roles, once you assign it, the next step would be to what? Run the LDAP process. Okay, retrieve LDAP process that you can run from schedule process, or even you can run from setup and maintenance, called the this one, synchronize user and role, that particular task. This one, run user and role synchronization process, that also you can run. So both are nothing but the retrieve LDAP process. Okay, once the LDAP process completes successfully, the next step would be to assign the data access. Okay, now what is the data access? The BU data access. Okay, BU access that you need to provide. Okay, and if at all you have given any reference data set, okay, a custom reference data you have defined, and you have assigned it on any of the object related to payables, like the payment terms, okay, then in that case, you will have to provide the reference data set access also. Okay, data set access as well. If at all you have defined a custom one and assigned it at the set assignment, business unit set assignment, there was a task which I had shown you where you can assign the reference data set in case of custom accesses. Okay, for payment terms, let's say for example, then in that case you will have to provide that access as well. Okay, so let me show you BU access. So you can search by the task called manage business unit access. Okay, here, and then select the scope. The scope means the scope of your BU. Select that and then go inside. Okay, then click on add. Give the username, role, security context will be business unit, and you will have to provide your business unit for your access. Okay, otherwise you will not be able to book the transactions. Okay, so let me show you once I have already added mine. So how can I search if I have added mine or not? So I will first of all say user with data access. Okay, security context is BU, and username I will enter here, William, and role I will say accounts payable. Accounts payable invoice supervisor, let me see. And then I will say search. So yes, I have. For invoice payable supervisor, I have this ABC Corp Insurance BU access. Okay, I can check for others also, other roles also. Accounts payable manager role, let me check. Yes, I have business unit and ABC Corp Insurance. Okay, so once you have assigned it, you can check it this way. Okay, if it is assigned. And then the next step is we can go ahead now with the transactions. Okay, performing the transactions. And in the transactions, we are going to look at the invoicing aspects, because whatever setup is required with respect to invoicing, that we have completed. With respect to payment, there are few more setups that are required that we will see later on, after we complete the invoicing tasks or the invoicing transactions. Okay, but in a real life business, you will have to do all the setups first. Okay, only then will you be able to provide the or hand over the environment to your client for them to use it in the regular business. Okay, all right, so now I will go to navigator, and in the navigator I will go to payables, and in payables I will go to invoice. Okay, so we will understand this first. Have an overview of these aspects. Okay, these are called infotiles. Okay, for invoices, these are called invoice infotiles. Okay, actually these are for specific purposes. Okay, now scanned infotile, what does it give you? It gives you a list of all the invoices that are coming through the scanned process. Okay, so there is a feature in payables which I may not be able to cover, but yeah, just for your information, this is kind of an advanced feature. Okay, where by email, okay, or through other certain, generally it is the email only. Okay, the suppliers, they can send the invoices via email to a designated email ID. Okay, that is an Oracle email ID. Okay, so in that email ID, when they send, okay, the invoice, okay, what system will do is system will recognize it. Okay, and it will create the invoice automatically. Okay, there is no manual intervention required, but just by the supplier sending it, sending the invoice to that designated email ID. Okay, automatically system will identify. That means this ERP, Oracle ERP, payables will identify it as a payable invoice, and it will automatically create it, and you will be able to complete the remaining aspects or remaining processes. Okay, related to the invoice. So that is the scanned functionality or scanned invoices functionality. Okay, but then there are certain other requirements. There are certain specific setups required. Okay, there is a designated layout. which, according to which the supplier needs to send it. Okay, otherwise Oracle will not be able to identify it. So that layout setup and everything is to be done. Okay, and in that specific layout itself, the supplier also needs to send the invoice. Okay, then system will read it and it will create the invoice. Okay, so that is where all those invoices are called scanned invoices, because it is coming from a source called scan. Okay, so that is where you will see the list of those invoices under this particular scanned invoice infotile. All those invoices that are incomplete, okay, that have come through the scan process and that are incomplete. Incomplete means the process related to the completion of invoice is not done. Okay, it has just been created. All the remaining processes are there. Okay, so what are the remaining process? Okay, so there is a cycle, okay, with respect to payable invoices. There is a cycle followed. Okay, what is the cycle? First is the creation of invoice. That is the first process. Then the second process is validation of the invoice. Okay, that means validation means basically, based on certain setups that are set up, okay, for the holds. Similarly, even Oracle has its own system validations. So all those validation it will check. Okay, and if all those validation has passed, only then the system will be, we will be able to proceed with the next setups, or next not setup, next activities in the process of payable invoice recording. Okay, so that is the second step, validation. The third step is the approval. So that this approval coming after validation depends upon the setup that we have done at the invoice option level. So where we have said that, whether the validation is required before an approval is sent. If that is the setup, then in that case, approval comes as a third step in the processing of invoice. Okay, so you should remember those setups. That is the reason I'm actually again touch basing on those aspects which we have covered. Okay, and then the last one is the accounting of the invoice. So this is the sequence of step with respect to the invoices that has to be done. Okay, now this infotile, the scanned infotile, will actually show those invoices which have been created through the scanned process. Okay, and it is incomplete, and it will show you it in a bucket. Okay, the invoices that are 0 to 7 days old, invoices that are 8 to 14 days old, and invoices which are more than 15 days old. It will actually show it in under those buckets. Okay, so right now under 0 to 7 bucket, there is no invoices that are incomplete. 8 to 14, no invoices, and it is under 15 plus days. Okay, the invoice is incomplete. It is showing total 56 records, and when I click on that, it will give you all those records which are there. Okay, you see the status as incomplete. Validation status. Okay, so this is actually for the business users or the accountants to be informed that these are some of the invoices that have come through this source, and it is incomplete and requires their attention. Okay, that is why this infotile helps them. Okay, and that is why it has been given as a kind of a part of the dashboard here. Okay, then this recent invoices. Okay, so any other invoices that are being created, okay, that have been recently created, okay, manually. So that will appear under this recent tab, and you have certain buckets that you can select, like 3 days. Okay, so recent up till 3 days. Okay, if you click on it again, there is another bucket that will come up, that is 5 days. Okay, and if you click on again, 7 days. Okay, and then there is again 24 hours. So there are total 5 buckets, 24 hours, 3 days, 5 days, and 7 days. Okay, so 4 buckets I can say. Okay, 4 buckets are available in which you can see the recent invoices. Okay, the recently created invoices. Okay, then holds. So there are certain holds we have already discussed about, right? Payment hold. Okay, which we have set up at the invoice option level, as well as that can be set up at the supplier level, right? Like all unmatched invoices should be put on hold. So that is one type of hold. Similarly, there are many types of holds. Okay, certain system holds are there, certain process holds are there. Okay, so all those holds, okay, all those invoices that have gone into hold, okay, will be shown under this particular infotile. Okay, all those invoices are showing up. Now there are categorization of it has been done. Certain holds are related to validation, certain holds are related to purchasing, and others are related to some other holds. And accordingly, the number of invoices that are in holds are being shown. So if I click on this 183, which is against validation, so all invoices, all these invoices have validation holds. With reasons, it will show you what is the reason of the hold. Okay, like this case, total of invoice line does not equal to invoice amount. So invoice amount that is entered at the header level, against that, it compares the line totals and distribution totals. Okay, if it does not match, it will not allow you to process further, and it will put the invoice on hold with the validation hold. Okay. Now, if you click on this 29, it is purchasing hold. So related to purchasing, invoice is not matched to any PO. See, it is coming up because of the hold that was enabled at the invoice option level or the supplier portal, supplier profile level, or the at the site assignment level. We had seen for invoicing there are certain control options that we could put. Right, one of them was put on hold all unmatched invoices. So based on that, it is showing these holds, or these many records that are on such a hold. Similarly, others. So if I click on 118, there are other holds which are there. Now, what is that? The invoice has the same supplier invoice date, currency, and amount in the as invoice 501. So if there is a duplicate, system feels that there is a duplication of invoice. Okay, it will actually see based on it will verify based on the supplier name, invoice date, amount, and currency. In that case, if it finds, or if it says that if it feels that there is a duplication, then in that case it will put the invoice on hold, and that is categorized as other hold. Okay, so you see here all these things, all these hold reasons. Okay, so hold means basically it is still not completed with the validation process. The validation is still not successful. Okay, and it is put on hold. So those issues which the hold is highlighting, that needs to be resolved, and then you can move further. Some of the hold is resolvable, some of the hold cannot be resolved until and unless you do not correct the scenario. Okay, like the case of matching value, or the matching differences. Okay, so matching difference as in the PO quantity is different from the invoice quantity. So that is something that has to be rectified. Okay, that cannot be easily released. Okay, that cannot be manually released. Only when you rectify that situation, that hold will get released. Okay. So there are many such aspects that you will come across, and with testing you will become familiar with those kind of holds, and then necessary action can be taken. Okay, then approvals. This infotile is for approval. So all invoices, okay, which are pending for approval, or which are which has any other reason or any other status on the approval, or anything that has been rejected, whether it is user rejected or whether it is system rejected. Okay, because the rules could not be properly identified, or the approver rejected it because of any other reason. Okay, so all this will be showing under the rejected status. Okay, all those that are pending, that means in process, approvals in process are there, all those will be shown under the pending status. Okay, so if you click on it, it will show you the details of the invoices that are rejected, or that are pending for approval, or that are having other statuses related to. Okay, so it will show you those lists. Okay, then prepaid. Prepaid, why it is again given as an infotile? Because prepaid is an advance payment. Okay, and now the accountants, they need to keep a tab, or they need to keep a check on those kind of prepayments, so that overpayments are not done. Okay, and on a timely manner, whatever advance payments are done, they can be matched against or they can be set off or adjusted against the actual invoices. Okay, so that is why this prepaid infotile is there available, according to which you can track the prepayments and then take necessary action, okay, to apply it against the available invoices for the supplier. Okay, so that you can set off those prepayments, and you do not make, or it doesn't result into additional or unwanted payments to the supplier. Okay, that is why this prepayment as a tab is provided to you, so that you can keep a check, or the accountant can, or the manager can keep a check on those kind of prepayments and then take necessary action. Okay, so this is all about the infotiles that you can see. Give me 2 minutes. Let me have a cup of water. I'll be back. Okay. Now let's have a look at the task list. So this is the place where you will see all the tasks. Okay, this is for searching. Okay, quick search. Okay, if you want to know, if you know the invoice number or the party or the site, supplier site, then according to that you can quickly search it. Then this is basically reports and analytics. Okay, any reports related to the payables that you want to run it. Okay, so certain reports can be run from this section. Okay, that we will see later. Okay, and this is match in full. Okay, so full matching, if enabled at the business unit level, you can directly match it from here. Okay, so enter the purchase order and click on create invoice, and the invoice will be created by full matching against the purchase order. Okay, but that if that is enabled at the view level for that particular view, that can be done. Okay, now let us go to the task list and see the tasks that you can do. So under this, you will see invoices. So all tasks that you can perform with respect to the invoices that you can see here. With respect to the accounting of the invoices, okay, what all accounting related tasks are available that you can do it from here. Then asset, okay, this we will see later on. And then payable period, managing the payable period. Okay, that means opening or closing of the payable period. Okay, that is what can be managed from this section. Okay, so let us see if the payable period for current period is open or not. Okay, so that is our first task. Before entering the invoices, you need to make sure the payable period, the concerned period in which you want to enter the invoices, that is open or not. Okay, now this is the accounting period page for payables. The application is selected as payables, and this is maintained ledger wise. Okay, so again, you will have to search the ledger, your respective ledger. So let me search my ledger. ABC Corp primary ledger. Okay, April period is not open. Okay, what is the last period that is open? It is March 23, which is open. So you see here status. Okay, so this icon is for open period. This is for closed. This means permanently closed. This means future enterable, and this means never opened. Okay, so now in this case, current period April 23 is in future enterable status. Okay, prior period March 23 is open. Next period, that is May 23, is never open. Okay, so let us open March. Sorry, let us open April 23 as period. I will just click on, you can just select it and you can open the next period. That way also you can do. Okay, or else you can go inside it, by clicking on the ledger, you'll go inside the period section and select the specific period. April 23 is the period, and I will say open period. So process will be submitted. And if you want to see the process status, you can go to schedule process and see it, or else you can just click on here and refresh it. Okay, so now you see against April, the icon has changed, indicating this is now open, and May has become a future enterable. So you remember the future enterable period concept, right? I'm not repeating it. Okay. and then I click on done. Okay, so the period is opened. Accounting, you will now be able to enter the accounting date, okay, for this particular period on the invoices. So now I'll go to task list again, and I will say create invoice. First, I will explain the page related to the invoice, how the sectioning is there, and then we will, enter the details one by one. So invoice, basically it is split into three parts. Okay. So invoice headers are there, invoice lines, and invoice distributions. Okay. And then there are taxes as well. Okay. Now invoice headers will have all the primary details like the BU, supplier name and number, supplier details, I would say, then the invoice amount. Okay. And then payment, invoice currency, payment currency, accounting date, invoice date, XYZ, all the things that are actually supposed to be with respect to that invoice. Okay. All those information you can enter at the invoice header level. So let's say, for example, you have a physical copy, right? Physical copy of the invoice. Okay. So at the top, there will be details mentioned related to the supplier. Similarly, it will mention, the invoice currency, invoice date, payment terms, all these things, even on the physical document you will find. Okay, so all those things will be there at the invoice headers in the system also. And then there would be certain other aspects, okay, or certain other data inputs which are governed at the header level for the invoice. Those also you will see. At the line level, it is basically the charge details. Charge details, as in the charge related to items or services. Okay. So each line by line, okay, there will be details that you can enter. So even on the physical document, you will see item by item, they mention the details of the charge. What is the quantity? What is the unit price against each of the quantity? Okay, or each of the item, and then the total amount, right? That is how they provide it in the physical bill. Okay, you go to a restaurant, definitely you get a bill, and then in the bill you see, right, all those details, all the items that you have purchased or for which they have billed you. Okay, by item numbers, quantity. Similarly, you find the amount also, the per unit amount also, and then the total amount. All those things you find it, right? The same way, all those things basically you enter at the line level. Okay, then invoice distribution. Now there is an additional layer in the ERP, which is the invoice distribution, and practically that is where you have tag all the account combination as per which the accounting needs to happen for the invoice. Okay, for each expenses, okay, you might have to associate or tag a account combination. Okay, for the items that you have or the item lines that you have. Okay, you might want to have a tag account combination. Okay, so if it is a rent related invoice, then at the invoice line level, you will enter the rent as the description. Okay, and then the amount you will enter. And then at the distribution level, you will have to provide the account combination that is related to the rent expense. Okay, and which company it belongs to, that details you will have to enter, and then you will have to save it. And then which in turn will be taken up in the accounting process. If at all there are any taxes, that you will have to enter it at the tax level. Okay, or at the tax level, basically it will show you all the taxes that you enter. Basically, the taxes you will enter at the line level, invoice line level. Why? Because item by item, the taxes are applicable. Okay, so for each item, there would be it will be associated to a tax category. Okay, and then according to that, the taxes becomes applicable. Okay, and the summarized taxes you will be able to see at the tax level. Right now, we are not covering the taxes because the tax requires a setup, altogether a different setup in itself. Okay, so I will just show you how the tax can be selected, but then there are certain configurations for taxes that are applicable. Okay. Now this is the screen. When you click on create invoice, this is the screen or the blank screen that comes up. You will input the business unit. Okay. So what is the business unit for which you are entering the invoice. So that business unit for which you have access to, that will appear here. Right now I am seeing everything because I have access to everything. Okay, a custom role was created which gives access to all BUs. Okay, that is the reason I am having access to all BUs. Okay, right. I'll select, in my case now, I'll select ABC Corp Insurance BU for which we did the setups. Okay, that is the first step. The next is to select the supplier. Okay, let it first complete the selection. This is keeping on going round and round. Okay, now let me select the supplier. So the supplier, what we created, XYZ stationery, right? Okay, this one, Stationaries Incorporation. So I'll select that record after searching it. Okay, now you see supplier site and legal entity both have been populated. The supplier site is populated. First of all, let's understand the supplier record. Supplier site has been populated. So if you remember the setup, at the setup level, we had associated the BU with the site. Okay, and then that site, is something that is only one site was available, and that is the reason it is selected. Okay, if there were multiple sites available, then the default one will be selected, and then you will have an option to select other sites according to which the invoice is published or from where you have received the invoice. Okay, so those sites respectively you will have to select. Then legal entity will be automatically populated based on the BU setup. So at the BU level, we had assigned when we were when we were doing the setup called assign business unit business function. At that point of time, we had associated the legal entity and the ledger. So that is where, based on that legal entity that we had associated there, it is coming up. And also the ledger is tagged, okay, against this BU. So that is where, when you do the accounting for this particular invoice, that is the ledger that will be selected based on the setup that we had done. Okay. Then invoice group. So if you remember, this particular field has now become mandatory. Why has this become mandatory? Because at the invoice option setup level, we had enabled that require invoice grouping checkbox. That is the reason this has become mandatory. If that was not enabled, then this will not be mandatory, but still you will be able to enter the invoice group. So invoice group as a functionality, why is it utilized? So that you can record a group of a few of the invoices in a particular group. As a batch, you can record it. So that is where you can enter the invoice group here manually. Okay, and then that will be used up, and that is the same value that you will have to enter for all the invoices that you want to group together. Okay, so let me say insurance BU April invoice, I would say. For all April invoices, I want to create a group. Okay, April 23. So this is a group that is created. Okay, that will be created when I save it, and then same group I will have to add for all the invoices that are going to be created. You don't have an option to drop down to select it. Okay, that is the reason you will have to manually copy paste it. Okay, then the number. What is the invoice number for that? So it will be available on the physical document number. Okay, so on the physical document, whatever invoice number is there, that invoice number you will have to enter. Okay, so I will say invoice test 201. That is the invoice number, let's say. Now amount. Okay, the invoice currency is coming up as USD. So from where did this come up? It is coming up from the invoice option level. So there was a defaulting option available, right? So that is the reason it is coming up. Or even from the supplier level. If at the supplier level, site level, you have given this defaulting option, then it would be picked up from the supplier site level. Okay, so right now it is coming from one of those setups. Okay, had I not provided anything over there, then this would have been blank. Okay, and you would have to select it. Okay, you can select and then enter the amount. So let's say this is $1,000 invoice. I will enter it, and then the type. I mentioned, right, in today's session in the beginning, I mentioned each invoice is associated to a type. Okay, so if you click on this drop down, you will see standard, prepayment, debit memo, credit memo, retainage release. Standard is whenever you have a normal invoice for which, or a bill basically for which you are supposed to pay. Okay, so those kind of invoices, you will tag it as standard. Okay, that will be categorized as a standard invoice. Okay, and if there is a prepayment, if it is related to an advance, then you will have to select the prepayment as a type. If it is a debit memo or a credit memo, okay, so both the functionality for debit and credit memo both are for reducing the supplier liability, okay, or for correcting the invoices, the standard invoices. So that is the functionality of debit and credit memo. So you might ask me, if both the functionality is the same, then what is the reason of, what is the, if both are supposed to reduce the balances of the supplier, then why there is on two document category, document types, why not have one? Okay, the reason being, it is just a matter of from where it is originating. Okay, credit memo generally is received by us and it is actually issued by the supplier. Okay, so in cases whenever there is a defective item, okay, or for that matter, they want to give you extra credits, okay, some additional credits they want to give, okay, so that you continue the businesses with them, then in that case, they are the ones who actually issue a document for reducing the supplier balances. Okay, so that is where it will be called a credit memo. Now, debit memo would be in such cases when you as a business directly are, charging the supplier. Okay, charging the supplier as in charging the supplier to reduce the supplier liability in cases when there is a defective service. Okay, so service was provided by supplier and they raised an invoice against it, but then you found that the service was defective. Okay, and then that is the reason you would claim a credit. Okay, you would want the balances to be reduced, or you would want to charge the supplier for this defective service. So that is where you will create a debit memo, because that document for reducing the supplier balance is coming from your end. Okay, that is where you will create a debit memo. Okay, retainage release is for a different aspect that I will explain later, but then we will not be looking at it because that is not part of our scope. Okay. All right, so standard type will be selected as a standard. Okay, and you will have to enter the description, if at all any description you want to enter. Now the date, this date is for what? This is the invoice date. So basically on the invoice you will have a date. Okay, so that date you will have to enter. Then payment terms, what is the payment terms associated? So if you remember net 60, it is coming up from where? It is coming from the supplier side level. Why? Because at the supplier side level we have provided this net 60 as the defaulting payment terms. But at the invoice option level, you had provided at it as net 30. Okay. Okay. Why it did not get net 30? Because whatever you provide at the site level, it will take precedence. Okay. That is the one that will be selected. If at the site level, you kept it as blank, then it would have picked up from the invoice option level. Okay. So the payment terms is selected. Even you have an option to change it. If for that particular invoice, the supplier has said that you need to provide it in within 30 days. Net 60, the normal terms is not applicable for that invoice. Then in that case, you have an option to change it as well. Okay. Then the terms date. Terms date is coming same as the invoice date. Okay. Why? Because at the invoice option level or at the supplier site level, that is what you must have given. So the terms date is something that is coming up based on the options that you select. Okay. So at the setup level, whatever you have selected, according to that, the terms date will be populated. And then in turn, the due date for the invoice will be calculated. So we will see how the due date is calculated. Okay. So that you will be able to see at the installment level. We'll come to that later. So these things are available now. Okay. Now let me click on show more. This is the invoice header level. Okay. You see line level. Okay. Similarly, you will see also taxes, and there are other sections to distributions also. Okay. So that we will come one by one. So at the invoice header level, if you click on show more, you will see it is getting expanded and few more details are coming. So attachment, if you want, you can assign. If you want to add certain notes to this invoice, you can add certain notes. Okay, descriptions you can provide. Okay. Then if you click on accounting tab, that is where you will see some default accounting information like the accounting date. Okay, what is the applicable accounting date for this invoice? Okay, then the liability distribution. So this is what? This is the supplier liability. And where is this coming from? If at the site level you have given a supplier liability combination, then it is what will be picked up. Or if it is not there, then it will be picked up from the invoice option. That is the reason why that was a mandatory setup. Okay, the supplier liability has to be, combination has to be selected. Okay, so this is the place where it is selected. Okay, now document category. So document category is coming up as standard invoice. I mentioned, right? There is a document category associated with respect to each type of document that you select. So the type of document is this one. Okay, so based on that, the document category is selected in the accounting tab. Okay, and this would have been editable if we had enabled that option at the invoice option level to override the document category. Okay, and then based on this document category that is associated and based on the setup that we saw earlier, that is the document sequence. Okay, if that is available, then the voucher number will be automatically derived when you save it. So when we save it, you will see a voucher number getting assigned. Right now it is blank, but when you save it, this will be available. Okay, so that we will see when we do that activity, the saving activity. So for starters, I have entered all the required information. Okay, and then now I will say at the line level, I will enter the line details. Okay, so there are three types of lines that you can enter: item, freight, and miscellaneous. Okay, so if it is anything related to freight, then you will have to enter the freight line. If it is a miscellaneous charge, then you will have to enter miscellaneous. If it is related to any item or service, okay, then you will have to select the line type as item. Enter the amount for the item. Let's say, for example, there were 2 items in this invoice. So for the first item, it was 100, or let me say it as 400. And for the second item, it is 600. Okay, and the distribution combination. Okay, by default here you can enter the distribution combination here, which in turn will be defaulted at the distribution level. Right now I am not entering it. Okay, let me give the description for these items. Since this is not coming from PO, that is where the item will not be selected, but I can enter a description here. Okay, so here we have the reference description. I will say as service, some service. Okay, maintenance service. Okay, and the other one is related to repairs. So right now what we are doing is we are entering a standalone invoice. Okay, that is an unmatched invoice. This is not a matched invoice. This is an unmatched invoice. Okay, so hence we will have to enter all these details, and at the distribution level, okay, I will have to enter the combination where it needs to be accounted. So for line 2, now we will be entering the distribution. Okay, so you see here, this is where you have the distribution. Line 2, the invoice line, what is it associated to? Line number 2. And now you need to enter the distribution. Just a minute, please. Okay, now I need to add the accounting information for that line. Okay, so I will click on add. So you see here these details. Okay, line, it is associated line number 2. Okay, item number 2. Okay, and for item number 2, this is distribution 1. Okay, and then the amount is showing here because this is related to line number 2. What was the amount that we had associated to line number 2? It is 600. Okay, so you will have to enter that amount. Now again, if you want to split that further, split that line for accounting purpose, you want to split it further, you can do that. Okay, so what would be the scenario? Let's say, for example, this repairs expenses, this repair services you have incurred for multiple departments. So department wise, you want to allocate the expense. So that is where you can split it. Okay, you can split the amount again further. So let's say, for example, out of this 600, I have incurred 200 for one department. That is the corporate department, let's say. And the remaining 400 and out of this 600, I have incurred for some other department. So that splitting also from an accounting perspective, I can give at this level. Okay. So let me select the distribution. So company to which it is applicable for 200. Okay, the liability was applicable for 200, right? So that is where the company at the expense level also you will select as 200. Cost center. Okay, so this is incurred for corporate, let's say. Out of the repair services, $100 is for, or $200 is for corporate. Line of business, I will take it as default. And account, I will say, what is the actual expense account? So let me see if there is a repairs and maintenance expense available. Repairs expense, if it is available or not. So there should be available, okay, something. Okay, so there is this repairs and maintenance code that I have selected. Okay, this is not related to intercompany, so I will keep this as default value. Okay, and then future, I will say default value. Okay, and then click on OK. So the combination against this amount, the split amount I have entered. Now I want to add a second time. Okay, and there for the remaining amount, which is out of this 600, the remaining of 400. Okay. And this is supposed to be for second department, but the account combination will remain. The natural account will remain same because this is expense, repairs expense. Okay. But then this is for splitting the amount to another department. So let me say this is for admin. 400 was incurred for admin department. So that is where the account combination has to be provided accordingly. Okay, you understand, right? From where I am, the scenarios that I'm explaining, and how you can enter these information. So now you see the 600 is total. 600 is entered for the line. Okay, and even the distributions have been entered for 600, and now the remaining, there is no remaining amount pending. Okay, so the total line amount has been added to the distribution also, and then save and close. If at all there is a mismatch, then at the time of validation, okay, system will give you an error saying that at the line level, the amount was entered as 600, but for the distributions for that specific line, the amount is not complete. Okay, there is some difference. Okay, so it will show you or indicate that. Okay, you see here, because this document was saved, the voucher number has been assigned. Okay, so it is coming up from that setup, the document CPAT setup. Okay. Then this, we completed this for the accounting information for this line. Okay, the second line item, but for the first line item, still it is not complete. So for first line item also, you will have to provide the details. So I will select first line item, click on distribution. Now see here, remaining amount is saying as there is a warning icon. That means no distribution. There is no distribution line which is tallying up with the line amount. So that is where it is showing a warning sign, and it is showing under the remaining amount. If you, for any case, let's say, for example, by mistake, you forgot to enter this distribution. Okay. And you move on to the next process, that is validation of the invoice. Okay. Then system will put this invoice on hold. Okay. Saying that the data or the information is not complete, or there is some issue with the invoice. Okay, so let me just complete it for this particular case. Let me do the complete setup so that you can see one full cycle. Okay, so I will say number for invoice line number 1 also I will enter the distribution. Against this item, I don't want to split it. I just want to charge the entire amount of 400 to one cost or one expense and one department. Let's say this entire cost depends to or has been incurred for company 200 again. Cost center, I will associate it as, let's say it was entirely for the CEO office. Okay, line of business. If at all line of business is applicable, let's say if it was for my pharmaceutical business, or let's say this was for my pharmaceutical line of business, and account is, again, this is going to be a part of repairs and maintenance, and intercompany is default, and future is default. Okay, and then click on OK. So the account combination also we have associated to this particular line number 1. Okay, in a real life business, you will see a lot of aspects, like, if it is a food related item, okay, then the item description would be different. Okay, it will be, let's say, if it is a normal invoice related to food, so let's say if it is pizza, okay, so pizza will be one item. Then brownie, okay, will be second item, the dessert. Okay, if there is any cold drink that you have purchased, again, that will be a third item. But then everything is to be recorded as a part of food and beverages. Okay, or it might be, if it is something that you have incurred for your staff, okay, as an entertainment expense, then everything you will book it in the distribution. You will select the code combination. Under the natural account, you will select entertainment expense, and then to which department do you want to charge it, or to which line of business this expense belongs to, and to which company this belongs to. That is the other codes that you would select. Okay, because that is significant from the accounting perspective. Okay, and then the accounting date is something that will be defaulted from the header level. If it is a different accounting date that you want to give, that you can provide. Okay, and then save and close. Okay, so document voucher number is assigned. Let's save it first. Let's save this document, that is the invoice. Okay, and again it will display the message that this is the voucher number assigned. Why is this message getting displayed? Because at the document sequence configuration level, you had enabled that messaging checkbox, okay, or display message checkbox. That is the reason this message is coming up as an information. So that just by looking at this, you can see this is the number assigned. Okay, and then you will note it down on the physical document, and then you will file it. Okay, and if you want to see this number, where is it displayed? In the accounting information, see here under voucher number, this is displayed. Okay, save it. And the next item or the next process for the invoice, what is that? As I mentioned, right? The next process is validation. So now you have created the invoice, and that is the reason you see the status of the invoice as not validated. You have just created and saved your invoice. It is not yet validated. So we will enter the next process, that is the validation process. So in the invoice action, there is a validate icon available. So you will click on that, as I did just now. So now the validation process is running. System is doing the validation. Okay, and it has encountered some issue. That is the reason it is saying the status as needs revalidation. Had it been properly validated, then the status would be validated. Okay, but right now it is needs revalidation. Okay, so if you want to see what is the issue with that, so you just click on this hyperlink, needs revalidation hyperlink. Just click on that. So it will show you the complete status. It is showing you the validation status as revalidation, approval as required, okay, accounting as unaccounted, payments as unpaid, due date is calculated, okay, based on the payment terms and whatever setups you had done it. Based on that, the due date is calculated. It is 6/7/2023. Okay, and then holds. This is where it will show you with respect to any issues, that validation issue that the system encountered. With that respect, it will show you the holds. Okay, so if it is related to installment, then it will show you here. If it is related to line variance means the invoice line amount the amounts that you have entered at the line level and the amount that you have entered at the header level. Okay, there is a difference between that, let's say. In that case, it will show you the line variance, okay, hold. Okay, indicating that there is a difference between the line and distribution, and then you need to rectify it or correct it, and then you can revalidate again. Okay, similarly, if there is a difference between the line amount and the distribution amount, then it would show it under distribution variance. Okay, manual hold is what sometimes for some reason, okay, the accountant himself would put the invoice on hold, okay, so that they are not further processed until the next action item or until the next decision is arrived at. So let's say, for example, there was a dispute between your supplier and your business, and for that reason the manager would have instructed you to put the invoice on hold from further processing. You don't want the invoice to be picked up in the payment process. Okay, so that is where you will manually put the invoice on hold until the next decision comes from your manager saying, okay, now it is okay to release it. Okay, then in that case, you will release it later on. Okay, now here in this particular case of invoice, you see the hold as system hold. That means something related to, some system related holds are placed on the invoice. Okay, so now how to check it? What is the hold? So you click here on this icon on the against one hold. That means there is one hold. And when you click on that, it will show you what is the reason of that hold. It is saying matching required. Invoice is not matched to any PO. Why is this coming up? Because of the setup that was done. Okay, hold unmatched invoice setup was done at the invoice option and the system and the supplier side level, right? So that is the reason it is showing you this hold. But then this is releasable. Okay, this can be manually released. Okay, so that is where from here in the release section, click on the drop down name, and you can say, scroll down and say validated. That means, okay, this is fine to be, not PO matched. Okay, because this is related to a service against which there is no PO available. And that is the reason this is manually releasable. And hence, once system will place it, then you can release it manually. Okay, in the release section, you will go and select the name as validated, and the status will be updated, and you can save and close. So you have manually released it. Why? Because this is supposed to be not PO matched. Okay, and now you see what is the status? The status has been updated. Status has been updated as validated. Then you save it. And then comes the next process of sending this invoice in the approval. Okay, so how can you send it? So now if you look at the status of the invoice, so you click on this hyperlink and you will see the status. Validation, it is validated. Okay, that validation process is now complete. Approval is not complete yet. That is required. That means you need to initiate the approval now. Okay, so now again from the invoice action, you will go to approval and you will say initiate. Okay, this initiation will work if at all you have enabled the approval process. Where have we enabled the approval process? In the invoice option. And if at all there are rules available, then it will go to the respective approver and the approver can approve it. But right now, since the rules are not available, the process will get rejected. Okay, saying that there is no rule available. Okay, so that is where in the validated status, okay, now the approval status is initiated. Okay, saying that the approval is in progress. Okay, since the rules are not there, it will get rejected. Okay, now since the rules are not there, we need to even set the status as manually approved, and that is the reason I will go to approval and I will say force approve. Why? I want to do the other remaining processes. Okay, so that is why I am forcefully approving this. Okay, and this forcefully approving this thing will work only if at the invoice option level that thing is enabled, that checkbox is enabled. Otherwise, it will say, okay, this is not applicable for your invoice. It will not allow you to force approve it if that checkbox is not enabled. In a real life business or in a real life process, business process, that checkbox will not be, that checkbox will not be enabled, so that there is a control in place and it will go through the proper channels of approval. And then the manager or the people who are supposed to approve it will approve. Only then the status of the invoice will become, workflow approved. Okay, in such scenarios, when it is approved to the rules, then it will show the status as workflow approved. In this case, it is capturing the status as manually approved. Why? Because we have forcefully approved it. Okay. Then save. And the next process is to account the invoices. Okay. So invoice action. Okay. You can do two things. First, if you want to check the accounting, you can do account in draft. Okay. So that will create a draft accounting. Okay. It will not be the final accounting, but a draft accounting. That means it is just for checking purpose that the accounting is done. Okay. But then if you want to finally post it to the ledger, that means you want to do the final accounting against this invoice, then you will have to click on post to ledger. Okay, so let us see one by one. Account in draft I will do. So this accounting is again controlled from where? Based on the option that you have set at the invoice level, invoice option level. So where you have mentioned, right? Only after approval the accounting can be done. Okay, so that is where based on that it is happening. If you try to do the accounting before approval, then in that case, system will say that it is not applicable. Why? Because the setup actually will restrict you, okay, from doing the accounting before the approval is completed. Right now, this draft accounting is created, and if you want to view accounting, you click on view account, view accounting, and it will show you the accounting entry against this invoice. And it will pick up all the account combination you have input. Okay, so at the distribution level, you had distributed the cost. Okay, for the first line you had entered 51003. Okay, so that is where it is booked under this distribution. Okay, this distribution combination. Okay, so these are all item expense lines, okay, that have been booked. And then supplier liability is also going to be booked. Okay, it is only two lines. Why? Because there are only two item lines based on which the liability is going to be booked. And from where is this account combination picked up? At the header level, at the invoice header level, you had the supplier liability account, right? So based on that, it is picked up. Okay, so that is where you see the net entry item expense to liability. And the splitting will happen in this manner, according to which you have input the distribution. Okay. So, and you see the status of the accounting. What is it? It is draft. And when is it accounted? On today's date, it is accounted. Okay, but this is draft status. Okay, now if you want, okay, if you feel that, okay, everything is fine, the accounting is as expected, then you will do the final posting. That is post to ledger. So from an accountant's perspective, the job of an accountant is very crucial in that he has to input all the invoice related information properly, and also the accounting detail that is also properly put, because it ultimately impacts the financial accounting and it impacts the financial statements. And that is where the accounting combination that he enters has to be properly entered. So he, being an accountant of the business, he is the person who would know what is the proper accounting to be entered. Okay, and now the accounting is completed final. When you clicked on the post to ledger, it will show the status as final accounted. So I'll click on view accounting, and now you see the status, it is final. Why? Because you did the post to ledger action. Okay, and this has been finally accounted. And even you will be able to see what is the journal entry that is created in GL. Okay, so how can you find it? So if you click on this drop down, okay, you will see the GL transfer date. So when was it transferred to GL? On this date. What is the journal entry batch that is created in GL? This is the journal entry batch that is created. So now if you just copy this, okay, go to GL, general ledger application. So let me open a new tab and I will go to general ledger application. Okay, that is how can I go to general ledger application? From the navigator, I'll click on general accounting. And then in that, I will go to journals. Okay. And in the journals, I'll go to, I want to search the journal. That is where I'll go to manage journals. Okay. And in manage journals, for which period is this applicable? So this is applicable for April 23. Select the April 23 period, search, click on OK, and you can directly search with the batch name. So this is the journal batch name. Enter it in the batch section, batch search criteria, and click on search. Okay, now you see this. This is unposted. Ideally, it should have been posted. Why? Because you said post to ledger. Okay, ideally, it should have been posted, but there would be some reason why it was not posted. Okay, so let us just click on the journal and try to see what is the issue, why it was unposted. Okay, so it is not showing the error details here, but what I am suspecting is this is in the future enterable period in GL. In the GL, the period is not opened. So how can you find it? So basically, if you go to the schedule process, okay, once you had run the general ledger, okay, if you go to the schedule process, there would be a program that is running, okay, and it will show you the execution report, okay, or the accounting report, okay, which will indicate what is the issue with the process, okay. So that is where it will give you the detail why it was not posted to GL. The journal entry has been created in general ledger, okay, but then it has not been posted. What is the reason? That you will be able to identify based on the report that is that would be available in the schedule process. Okay, so now let me just save and close this invoice. Okay, so from the invoice perspective, if you look at the status now, again clicking on validated, you will see all this. Validated, approval is manually approved, accounted is accounted. Okay. So this is the entirety the process that happens with respect to the invoice creation. Okay, tomorrow onwards, we will see different scenarios or different types of invoice that can be created. Okay, so different scenarios we will have a look at from tomorrow. All right, a bit extensive topic because I started with this topic, I had to complete it. That is the reason we stretched up till this time. Okay. Any questions if you have, you can ask tomorrow in the beginning of the session with respect to this invoice, and then we can solve it out and then move ahead with our remaining transactional activity. Thank you guys. Okay, time for other doubts.